Hello. In the 1040s, Edward the Confessor chose a site we know today as Westminster, previously occupied by King Canute, to build a new and important royal palace and church. At the time, there was no official capital of England. London was the largest city. The treasury and several administrative functions were based at Winchester. The court moved with the king, and the seat of government was wherever the monarch happened to be with his royal seal, the all-important authenticator of official documents. Initially simply another royal residence, Westminster increasingly became the most important royal centre, to which the various departments of civil administration, the mechanics of rule, the government machine, gravitated over time. Westminster remained the centre of royal authority until Henry VIII moved to Whitehall in the 16th century. After the Norman conquest, William the Conqueror demonstrated the dynastic legitimacy to which he laid claim by adopting Edward's church and palace for one of his primary royal centres. William presided over 3 great feasts each year: at Christmas in Gloucester, at Easter in Winchester, and at Whitsuntide in Westminster. The great and good of the land were invited to these occasions. William wore his crown, and events were conducted with considerable pomp, designed to reinforce the king's authority. William II, William Rufus, added Westminster Hall to the palace complex in 1097. At the time, the largest hall in Europe, approximately 275 feet by 80 feet. Size matters. William Rufus's hall was an opportunity to impress, to create a highly visible symbol of status and power, designed to overawe guests and visitors. Construction of the hall made Westminster the ceremonial centre of the kingdom, built to host banquets, over which the king presided, seated on a throne, a chair of state set on a raised dais at the end of the hall furthest from the entrance, and where the king would be higher than everyone else, making an unequivocal statement about who was in charge, and for a daunting approach by anyone attending for an audience. Similar arrangements on a much smaller scale were found in manorial halls across the land, with local lords presiding over their estates and communities. In Westminster Hall, the royal throne was a symbol, a reminder of the king's authority, even if the king wasn't there in person. So synonymous is a throne with sovereign power, the term is often used as shorthand for royalty, a cross-cultural symbol representing the power of the person who sits on it, and sometimes as conferring that power on its occupant. The gods of ancient Greece sat on thrones. A throne dating back to around 1800 BC is built into the walls of the palace at Knossos on Crete. In the 17th century, the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan commissioned the jewel-encrusted and canopied peacock throne, raised on a platform with silver steps. Game of Thrones was an incredibly successful historical fantasy series of books and TV drama. In the opening scene of the Bayeux Tapestry, in which Edward the Confessor is shown addressing Earl Harold, the king is depicted with the trappings of his authority, wearing a crown, holding a sceptre, and seated on a throne. Public giving was another way in which power and control could be demonstrated. After ceremonial feasts held at Westminster, Henry III distributed generous quantities of food to the poor. The post of Lord High Almoner, usually occupied by a bishop heading up the office of the Royal Almonry, which was responsible for giving alms to the deserving poor, dates from 1103. The tradition of distributing Maundy money began with Charles II in 1662. The Exchequer transferred to Westminster from Winchester under King John in the early 13th century. Westminster Hall had become the main base for the courts of justice from 1178, and from 1310 home to the Chancery, the Lord Chancellor's division of the High Court, responsible for issuing royal charters and letters under the King's seal. William Wallace was tried and condemned in Westminster Hall in 1305. Richard II commissioned the magnificent hammer beam roof at Westminster Hall in 1393. It was the largest open medieval roof in Europe, decorated with 26 angels, each holding the royal coat of arms. 3 lions, confusingly called leopards in heraldry, passant gardant, a device first used by Richard the Lionheart in 1198. A coat of arms not only served as an easily identifiable battlefield sign, it was also a symbol of authority. Lion, king of beasts, was linked with bravery, and by association the king too shares the same supposed attributes. He is lordly, strong and brave. In Richard II's arms, the 3 lions are quartered with the fleur-de-lis of France, a reminder that from 1340 the rulers of England had also laid claim to the French throne. Richard's rebuild also featured a string course with more than 80 chained white harts, Richard's favourite heraldic badge, derived from the arms of his mother, Joan of Kent, each one a little different, and by the addition of life-size statues of every king from Edward the Confessor to Richard himself, set in niches along the walls, all with brightly painted robes and wearing gilded crowns. Symbols aimed at projecting authority and dynastic continuity, and possibly intended to suggest an altarpiece representing the supposedly divinely ordained nature of monarchy, a state of grace considered to be conferred by the sacrament of coronation in the Christian Middle Ages. Earlier kings of the Anglo-Saxon heptarchy trace their descent in a direct line from the god Woden. Ironically, it was in Westminster Hall that Richard II's formal deposition took place in a statement read out on the 30th of September 1399, and where his successor, Henry IV, held his coronation banquet just under 2 weeks later. Next time, having briefly mentioned the royal seal in this video, I shall explore the use and significance of seals in more detail. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to be informed when the next video is available, or you can subscribe by clicking on the rose window over my shoulder.